Hello and welcome to Talk from Superheroes. Hey everybody, I'm Andrew Ivemy.
And I'm Diana McCullum.
And you're listening to Talk from Superheroes, where every week we discuss a piece of heroic television or film. And this week on the podcast, we will be talking about Real Steel.
We're going to talk about Real Steel, for real.
Yeah, the 2011 film starring Hugh Jackman, directed by Sean Levy.
Neither of us had seen. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be new for all. Maybe you guys have seen it. I'm not going to speak for the listeners.
Well, yeah, we can't speak for them.
I can't speak for you listeners. Yeah. I don't know how well this did at the box office. I didn't check.
I also have not. Mid? I'm going to just guess mid.
I think it, because I haven't heard of it as a flop.
Yeah.
But it definitely wasn't a success.
Yeah. So I'm going to guess mid.
We're both going to go with mid.
I'm going to guess mid. And before we do talk about the movie, you wanted to talk about things.
I'm just going to talk about a little me thing for a quick second. As you all may know, hopefully, or I've done a bad job, I have a book coming out. This book is called Sex Lives of Superheroes, Wolverine's Immortal Sperm, Superman's Porn Career, The Things Thing, and Other Super Sexual Matters Explained. If you've ever read any of my cracked articles or my fun superhero writings, you'll know that I love writing about superheroes in a comedic but scientific way. So it's a look at how superpowers would affect the sex lives of the heroes that have them. It's super fun. I interviewed actual doctors. I did tons of research. It's really fun. It's available in November. But if you want to pre-order it, here's a fun fact. You can get 25% off this week. And who doesn't like... That's like a lot.
That is a lot off.
That's a lot off.
That's a sweet deal and a good thing.
It's a sweet deal. So if you think you're going to get this book and you want to get it for less... Great news. If you go to Barnes & Noble this week, there's 25% off. Only books available for pre-order. Use the code PREORDER25 when you buy the book. And that's all you got to do for 25% off. Sex Lives of Superheroes by ya girl, Diana McCullum.
Easy peasy, saving money and reading.
Save money and reason. Available on Barnes & Noble and from Penguin Random House and all those good places.
Go check it out.
Go check it out for 25% off with the code PREORDER25.
Get the pre-order, get the discount on, and it's all very exciting. And before we get into this week's episode, which by the way, it's Real Steel because we are covering it in the build up to Deadpool and Wolverine, which I assume everyone knows that Wolverine, played by Hugh Jackman, which is the tie-in to Reels.
What?
Yeah, what?
We're blowing minds here, baby.
And as well, directed by Sean Levy? Levi? I think Levy.
I've never seen an interview with the man.
Well, either way, directed by Sean Levy. So we got the same director and same star, which is why we're tying it into Real Steel before we talk about Deadpool and Wolverine in 2 weeks. So next week on the podcast, we'll be talking about Twisters. So not a build-up to Deadpool and Wolverine, or is it? We'll see what that Twisters post-credit looks like. You know what I mean?
You never know.
You just never know. So next week, we'll be talking about Twisters, but then it'll be on to Deadpool and Wolverine. And before we talk about Real Steel today as well, we want to thank our sponsor of today's episode, our friends over at Mint Mobile.
Our friends over at Mint Mobile, and they're my friends because they make my life easy. And that's what friends should do.
That is what friends should do. They don't make you jump through hoops.
No hoops.
They're not rude to you.
They're not rude. They're not like, here's some small font you didn't read full of things you didn't agree to. Mm-hmm. They're like, here's a straightforward contract. You know what that contract says? It says you can get a wireless plan for $15 a month for 3 months. And that's crazy cool.
Yeah, and if you go to mintmobile.com/TFS, you'll see that there right now. All 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. They make it as easy as it could be in order to sign up and to get it. There's really nothing. There's nothing about it where I'm like, what? Like, there's no like, when does the secret pop-up come up that tells me all of the weird stuff?
No, there's no secret pop-up. There's no email you're going to get later that was like, by the way. It's just easy, straightforward. All plans come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. Also, you know what? Owned by Ryan Reynolds, and we're doing a Deadpool month, so it all just makes sense. Also, your friend.
It's also your friend.
Your friend Ryan.
It's synergy and friendship, and that's everything that's going on over at Mint Mobile. So to get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com mintmobile.com/TFS. That is mintmobile.com/TFS. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/TFS. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower, above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. And now, let's get into the episode. Let's talk about Real Steel. Turns out it did flop, by the way.
Oh no, not Real Steel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nowhere close.
Okay.
Nowhere close. The budget was a little over $100 million. And for those of you who don't know the numbers in the industry, typically you want to at least make your budget back on opening weekend alone. It made $27 million open weekend, and then even gross, it made $85 million. So it never made its budget back.
Oof.
So that's a flop.
Baboof. That is a flopper.
But forget about
that. But it's weird. This movie's so weird. It's got a 7.1 on IMDb. I don't know what's happening.
I also don't know.
That's not flop numbers.
That's not flop review numbers. So that's a little bit interesting. But let's not talk about the business. Let's talk about, that's the business.
You guys aren't here for the business.
We're not the business podcast to talk about the business. We are talking about what we think of it, how we enjoyed it. Let's start with the usual, the simple question. Diana, did you like it?
Oh, Lord, no. I'm so glad it flopped and they didn't make a Real Steel 2 that I had to watch.
Harsh.
I think this movie sucked. This is the worst movie I've seen since Ready Player One.
Whoa.
I really think it's really bad. I think the graphics are better than Ready Player One. The robots look fantastic. This is probably my only positive of the whole thing. The robots look fantastic. But other than that, and it does get a little bit more interesting and charming as it goes, but it's just I don't like any of the characters. I think the storyline's trash. It doesn't move me. It doesn't charm me. It doesn't make me laugh. It, I guess doesn't bore me too bad, but I'm not engaged. I'm not rooting for anyone. They made Hugh Jackman way too much of a piece of shit for his redemption arc. There's redemption arcs, and there's this is a trash man who shouldn't have a child. So I just did not enjoy this movie in any way. It didn't seem to know what it was doing. It's too long, and that's with clearly deleted scenes that we can tell were there and got rid of. It was still over 2 hours. So it's too long, it's boring, he's a trash man, I don't like anyone. That's about it. Those are my feelings of Real Steel, and I think the robots look pretty good, but I don't like the fights. Andrew, how'd you feel about Real Steel?
I'm not as harsh as you. I did not enjoy it.
Okay.
I didn't have a good time. I agree that the storylines are kind of a mess. It runs a bit too long, and people are kind of irredeemable. It's largely a writing problem. I think that I found a few more strengths in here than you. I agree, visuals is one of them, but I think that there's a few other positives in here. I think that the director, Sean Levy, I think actually does a pretty good job of visual storytelling. I think that there's some good looking stuff in here. I think that there's a handful of good performances in here. I think that there are some redeeming features to this that kind of bring it out of dumpster pile. But for the most part, the story just isn't engaging, and it just kind of doesn't work as a tale, which is a real shame. So generally, it's yes, I didn't have a good time watching it. I wouldn't watch it again, but it's the kind of thing that I watch and I'm oh, there are some people who did some really good work here. There are some people who worked on this film who I think did an excellent job, and I would never hold it against them for being in this film. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not holding this movie against anybody. Maybe the writer. Who wrote this?
Well, so this is the tough thing, is that there are, I think there are 4 writers listed who adapted. Never good. And I actually feel bad for Richard Matheson, this is based on a short story that Richard Matheson wrote. And I am actually kind of sad for the amount of times that Richard Matheson has written short stories that movies come out and people are you should read the short story though. It's actually pretty good.
Oh, what else has he
I Am Legend.
Oh shit! I mean, I Am Legend's not a flop bad. I like I Am Legend.
I think there are
but
some.
the story is like way better.
Yeah, I've read the short story of that. That is a wildly better. That is a really good story. I have not read the short story that Real Steel is based on. Also, The Box. Which was a few years ago, like the sci-fi one of the, I can't remember if James Marsden was in it, but it's a box you press and like you get rich but someone dies type of a thing. It's a typical ethical quandary, and apparently that's a fantastic short story and a film that's kind of like, yeah, you should read the short story. So I like.
So they're great. They're great. You should read the story.
They just can't be adapted properly. You know what I mean? Like it's like an Alan Moore comic book. Like it's just leave it alone. Like it's just that kind of a thing.
Well, there's feeling bad for someone, and then there's like he's doing just fine though.
Oh, financially, I'm not worried about him.
There's kind of a like at least he has the history of everyone being like the book's good. Don't worry, you should check that out. Like
I think he's definitely doing fine in that regard.
But it does suck to not have like any great adaptations of your work.
Yeah, for people to not like be able to adapt and understand the kind of like the theme and the power of what the work is as well, and to be like, oh, here's a thing with vampires. Oh, here's a thing with like a sci-fi box. Here's a thing with robots. To be like, yeah, but what was the theme of those short stories? And the adaptations are just like,
yeah, no one took the theme. They just took kind of the sci-fi elements, and the fantasy elements. All right,
and he's a classic Twilight Zone writer as well. So these very like these type of stories. But yeah, the story of this movie doesn't work.
It's a mess. It's all over the place. I'm like, is it about boxing? Is it about being a dad? Is it about an underdog story? Is it about learning to not be reckless? It's all those things. It's like it's Rocky, but it's not at all because there's like a father-son element involved.
It's Rocky, The Mighty Ducks, Ant-Man, Rain Man, Big Daddy. There's like 9 different types of movie in here. And I would say like maybe the closest one in terms of hitting all of those layers simultaneously that do it successfully is The Mighty Ducks, with like Emilio Estevez's character not being a father, but being kind of an irresponsible piece of shit and then learning to be a father figure to these kids in an underdog sporting tale.
Where they become victorious.
Yeah, so I would say The Mighty Ducks is probably the closest to like hitting all of the beats this movie is trying to hit, but the successful version of that. But in many ways, it's also being Rocky. Yeah, the robots are Rocky, but the father and son are like the Mighty Ducks, even in the sense that like Emilio Estevez's character was like the ex-athlete who is washed up and doesn't like doing it anymore.
Oh, yeah, that's very true. That definitely happened. So yeah, Mighty Ducks meets Rocky, which is too kind because those are 2 very good movies.
Yeah.
I really like both of those films.
Well, let's start with, I think, the biggest thing where this movie loses the audience. And I am going to say it is with Hugh Jackman's character of Charlie being far too bad of a far too mean and evil of a person.
Right out the gate. And like, there's like a guy who's down in his luck and like is irresponsible, but he wants to charge kids for photos $5. And that's like, that's not too terrible, but it's not great. We're introduced to him using his giant mechanical robot to fight a bull. A live bull, not a mechanical bull, which would make sense because, air quote mechanical bulls are a thing. That would actually be kind of funny.
That would be kind of funny
if he was fighting a mechanical bull with his human-esque robot. But he's fighting a live human bull, and he punches it a few times, and you're just like, fuck you, Hugh Jackman, you're beating up an animal.
So the movie starts with a man committing animal abuse.
And it's PG. This is a kid's movie. This is absolutely for children. And to be fair, when he punches the cow, the bull, it clearly becomes a CG one, but like it's a real bull the rest of the time.
I know that no animals were harmed in the making of this movie. Absolutely.
But me as an audience member is still like, fuck this guy.
This is not cool.
And like, at first he's mad. At first, they make you think he's going to be not a bad person because he's like, you said this bull? You want me to fight this bull? And I'm like, oh, great. He doesn't want to fight a bull. And he's like, this bull's too big. I want to fight a smaller bull.
More easily murderable bull for the crowd.
What are you talking about?
What?
You want to fight like, it's like if you went to a dog fighting ring and you're like, I would like to fight a chihuahua, please. I'm going to kick it so far.
Yeah.
I'm going to just yeet that thing.
This movie basically starts in a dog fight.
bulls,
Yeah. Not dogfight as in a metaphorical, like Top Gun dogfight, a actual dogfight type of a thing.
Because Hugh Jackman loses, but I assume if he had won, he would have killed the bull.
Yes. And I do not understand the rich but complicated cultural history of bullfighting. From my layman's perspective, it seems like it's mostly bull avoidance. I think at one point it was like that the bulls were killed or put down afterwards.
They would throw like spears into them and stuff, and that sucked.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think that's what we do anymore. God, I hope not. But also, it's like this is a sci-fi movie and it's a robot. Why do we need to physically abuse an animal in the opening sequence about our hero?
Mm-hmm. And also, I'm pretty sure the actual bullfighting that we're talking about that's happened is like very European, and this movie's set in America.
It's a rodeo.
It's a rodeo. Like they just you're supposed to tie a bull up and be like, look, he's tied up, and then you let him go and he's fine.
Yeah, it's how long can you ride a bull is what is done at American rodeos.
This robot should be riding a bull.
That's funny. That's the bull rides the robot. I don't know.
There's so many charming ways to do this.
There are. I really like your idea of a robot bull. I think that is fun. A mechanical bull with a mechanical rider, that's funny.
That's just good stuff.
But it doesn't establish that this movie is about boxing. But to be fair, punching a bull doesn't really.
That's not boxing.
That's also not boxing now that I think about it.
Well, that's one of my other negatives of this movie. We're about 45 minutes in before we even find out Hugh Jackman was ever a human boxer.
Yeah.
It's so late a reveal.
Yeah, it's rough. Mm-hmm. It is. And to continue on Hugh Jackman's character of Charlie as well. So we start with animal abuse. We open on animal abuse.
That he's excited for.
He is an active, excited participant in. He is not at all bummed out about it.
No, he makes a bet that he can beat the bull with another guy, that he can murder this bull.
Yeah. So that's how this movie starts. Mm-hmm. Then it turns into his ex-girlfriend, wife, his ex of some sort has died, to which he has no emotional response or the emotional response of a psychopath. And then he's also just like actively abusing a child for the first half of this movie.
Yeah. I mean, you jumped over so many things that happen in between there.
Hit me with some of the ones that I've missed in between.
Well, like he has no emotional impact to finding out like your ex-girlfriend died. To be fair to him, he hasn't seen that ex-girlfriend in 10 years, it seems. But then the person who informs him is also like, you're aware that you had a son with this woman. He's like, yes. Is he dead too? No emotion in his voice about asking if his son is also dead. And like, I kind of get if you haven't seen like a girlfriend you didn't date for very long in 10 years, you don't care that much maybe, but a potential child being dead.
to kind of, I'm going to say frankly, hope for it. He
seemed a little hopeful, didn't he?
To ask, because there is a different way to write that, because people will ask, and this is just kind of a human thing, even outside of script writing. People will ask questions loaded with the answer that they hope the question has. So in that scenario, the character could ask the question of, is my son still alive? Which implies that he's hoping that his son is alive.
Ooh, this is a great, very minute detail of writing.
But if you say, is he dead too? It implies that you're hoping he's dead and maybe you're going to get some kind of insurance payout. So, and that is something that actual human beings do. We will load questions that have multiple responses with the answer we're hoping to get from that question. And by him saying, is he dead too? I'm like, you want your son to be dead. Yep. You are actively in this moment hoping your son is dead.
Yeah,
like I don't like you.
No, I don't like you. It's clearly like a responsibility that's been at the back of his mind for like 10 years. He's like, ooh, that might be off my plate.
Yeah.
He wants a clean plate. Mm-hmm. Psycho behavior.
Truly psycho.
Truly psycho. And then the next couple of things are not just weird for Hugh, but also the aunt who is introduced is insanity. Mm-hmm. So Hugh goes to like the custody hearing for his son, I guess just to hand over custody. He does not want custody of this child. And his son's aunt is there and absolutely loves this kid and wants to take care of him. It's like, please don't give this absent father custody. I am my sister's sister. I'm his aunt. I will take good care of him. We're very wealthy. He'll have a great life. And she seems like a wonderful person. Mm-hmm. But so Hugh gives her custody, but then she agrees to go to Italy for 2 months and leave this kid with her absent father. Your sister died days ago, from what we're told.
Yeah, cancel the trip. And because, like, her husband is being the shady one in this scenario. And he's like, I actually don't want to cancel our trip to Italy because we have to take care of a kid. I want one last hurrah trip to Italy. And it's like, her sister just died. This isn't a last hurrah trip.
You're also very rich. You can go to Italy.
Anytime.
Anytime.
You can afford, if you can afford to pay someone $100,000 to take care of your kid for the summer, you can afford to pay someone $100,000 to take, you have an au pair.
In future time.
You're fine. You're fine.
Yeah, it is. It's not, I'm not weirded out that the husband like wants to go to Italy and pay the $100,000.
Yeah.
It is that this woman who seems loving and wants to take care of this kid is like, yeah, all right, we'll just leave him with you for 2 months. And you know what? We'll go to Italy, even though my sister, who I loved, literally just died. They don't introduce the kid to Hugh Jackman.
Yeah. They just let him out of a car and they're
On
like,
the
you
side
can
of the
figure
road.
out who your dad is, right? You last saw him when you were 2. 2 years old was the last time they saw each other.
They don't even meet like at the courthouse. They just drop him off. He gets out of the car. They don't wait in the car and see how it goes. You know when you do that kind of thing? You're like, well, let's make sure this goes okay before we drive off to Italy. They're like, nah, Hugh's got it. Hugh has no apartment. He has no housing. He has no child elements.
He really doesn't have a lot going on other than just being a garbage man.
Yeah, you're both bad parents.
Yeah.
Hey, Aunt, I thought you were crushing this, and then you weren't.
No, in no way. In no way.
And no one mourns this poor woman.
There is
The absolute lack of mourning of this mother.
There is some stuff about this that feels like it needed to be modernized because the story that it's based on is I believe was from like prior to the 60s.
Okay.
So there is some stuff about this that feels downright Dickensian writing. You know what I mean? To be like, let's buy and sell an orphan. Let's drop the orphan off at a street corner and be like, your dad's in that building, and then drive away.
Yeah,
we don't want to cancel our vacation to Italy. Like, there is a lot of it that I'm like, if this was a Dickensian novel, I'd be like, this actually kind of fits the cruel and like a heightened cruelty of an orphanage era England.
Yeah, this is kind of Oliver Twist or like Angela's Ashes, kind of like people just die and we move on because we're trying to survive.
Yes. Yeah. So there's some, even though it's sci-fi, it's not modernized enough. Like, he's got a slightly improved cell phone and there's robot boxing, but everyone still treats children like it's Dickensian England.
Yeah, the rest of the world is still just the normal world.
Yeah.
We haven't like downgraded to a world where like children work or like we leave them on the streets and don't care about them. It's not that kind of world.
No. Even like the official boxing circuit is like, yeah, a kid can be a coach. It's like, he can't get a paycheck. Like, you can't give him a tax form. Like, this is a child.
He is a child, but I will also say, even once they get to the like official licensed robot boxing, they're still paid in cash.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Still getting paid in cash at the like UFC level.
Yes.
Like Dana White just hands you an envelope of money at the
here
end
you go.
of a UFC
at
fight.
the end of a title card UFC fight. And
he
also,
doesn't.
you're a child. So keep that in mind.
Well, that's why cash is okay.
Yeah.
There are no tax
That legally
forms.
didn't happen in that regard.
Legally, a robot isn't a person.
Yeah, but again, clearly a story that was written pre-credit card e-transfer, and no one bothered to update that to be like, yeah, in the original short story, the boxing promoter hands you an envelope of cash because that was how those things were handled, and just no one modernized that. So just little things where I'm like, modernize it a little.
Well, it is also hard to modernize it when you need your guy to be like mugged by hooligans.
Yeah,
because they can't just like steal his debit card. That's not cool. Like you have to steal someone's cash.
Physical
if you're getting beat up for money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah.
But yeah, it's
there's better ways to do it.
Mm-hmm. But speaking of modernize, I do want to be positive for a minute. The robots look great.
This movie, the robots look great. I'm going to say in general, this movie looks fucking great.
Look great. They built real sets. They have tons of extras. The robots are cool because they physically made the robot and they CG the robot half the time. And that's actually like really neat because then the actors actually get to work with the real physical robot when he's not moving. Like they have puppeteers. Like when it's fighting, it's CG. But when it's like the scene where you're just like tinkering with it, they actually have a robot.
Yeah.
Which is so helpful.
Really helpful. Really.
Like you can tell that like they're not like distracted by like, where would the robot be? Should I put my hands here?
And even just like the sets, like the underground fighting ring, as well as a practical set, real extras as well, with the exception of like, you know, the final fight, which is in like a football stadium. So obviously then it's like, you know, they didn't get 80,000 extras, but scenes where it's like you've got a couple hundred extras, as much as is possible is real and practical. And it's not even just a matter of like, you know, oftentimes we can kind of covet and fantasize about the real and practical to be like, oh, it's so much better to have real. It's so much better to have real. It often is, and this scenario, it is, and the real is like shot well, it's lit well, it looks frankly just really fucking good visually.
No, I will agree with that. Yeah, it's not just the robots. It is actually filmed really well and looks really good. Like the fights are really clear. They go to like 8 different fighting locations and they're all wildly different and they all look really cool. It's like trash bag, like open area arena, and then it's like Anthony Mackie's cool like underground cage matchy one. There's actually one where it's like more like a cowboy bullfighting one again. Yeah. Then you get to like the UFC level, like big boss man show.
And even character scenes. I'm gonna say even like Hugh Grant and like the kid, like the son. Hugh Jackman. Sorry, not Grant. I don't know why. But
about a boy.
About a boy. Yeah, about a boy energy maybe is what I was thinking of there. But with Jackman and Dakota, who plays the kid, it's a really good rapport between them, and it's shot in wides where they're together. The camera work is really good, where it'll be like the camera actually moves with them as they walk side by side and have a conversation between one another. And it's not shot in singles like a lot of cheap, quick, we didn't have the stars for a long time movies are, where it's like, point the camera at Hugh, say this one sentence, okay, we got that. Point the camera at the kid say this one sentence, okay, we got it. And like leave to be like, it actually feels like they're scene partners, and it actually feels like these two are playing out scenes throughout the whole movie, and I really like that.
I will agree with that, yeah. I think this movie isn't particularly well written, but those two do bounce off each other. Yeah, it's poorly written in that I don't like Hugh Jackman's character for his actions, but he does have like a nice rapport with this kid that grows over the course of the movie. Like as actors, they're doing a great job.
Yes. And this kid, holy shit, this kid is acting circles around Hugh Jackman, I am going to say. Dakota Goyo is doing a phenomenal job and absolutely obliterating every scene.
He's really good. He looks like you were looking for an absolute face character match to Anakin Skywalker if Jake Lloyd was a slightly better actor. Like, no shade. I think Jake Lloyd was younger when he played Anakin as well. So no shade. But when he had his first scene, it was like, holy shit, Anakin Skywalker's here. Same like Bieber-esque mop of hair, looks just like him. But then he's like, oh no, you're a very good actor.
Really good actor. Yeah, really good, really emotional, really like resonant.
Really resonant. You can feel that he's like stubborn, but not in that like annoying stubborn kid way. And like also Hugh Jackman deserves it. So you're kind of like, yeah, be an asshole to Hugh Jackman. He's not trying his best. Usually a kid who's an asshole to an adult, the adult's trying his best. Yeah. But Hugh Jackman is not trying his best through most of this movie.
And a multi-layered performance as the kid, as Max as well, who's getting that kind of like, I've lost a parent and I take care of myself thing. Where sometimes like movies will do this where it's like, you're writing a kid as though they're an adult, and that writing a child as an adult adds a layer of complexity that a lot of younger performers have a tough time doing, and he does not in any way. Like there are moments where it's at the junkyard, and it's like, okay, so your life was saved, you are excited about robots, you are thankful of your father, but you are frustrated with him, but you are also independent and stubborn, and go. And he successfully is getting like 14 different adult emotions layered on top of one another, conveyed within a scene, rather than just like, I'm a petulant kid, rather than just one-dimensionally like, but I want robot. It is like, I want robot because, and you are an obstacle, therefore. Like, there's so many complicated things that he's actually successfully acting out.
Yeah, this kid didn't just like learn his lines. He did a character study on his character.
1000%.
Which is like wild for a kid to do who's 11. That's super cool.
Yeah.
That did unfortunately bring us to the scene where Hugh Jackman is like the biggest jerk he is in this movie, other than when he beats up an animal. And it's when he just like leaves the kid at the bottom of the cliff.
At the bottom of a cliff
Insanity.
of a junkyard that he broke them into.
So he breaks them into a junkyard and they're avoiding like spotlights because you can be arrested because they're stealing. That's all they're doing. They're just openly stealing. And then the kid falls down a cliff and he gets saved because the robot like hand snags him accidentally. And then Hugh Jackman saves him and they have this nice moment. And the kid's like, let's dig up this robot. And Hugh Jackman's like, no, you can stay at the bottom of this cliff and dig that robot out yourself, and leaves him at the bottom of a cliff for like 8 hours. It cuts to later. Hugh Jackman
The sun's come up.
The sun's come up. Hugh Jackman is waiting on the road and has left the scrapyard.
Yeah.
So the kid had to like dig up the robot himself, like, and then like not get arrested. It's broad
Still
daylight.
sneak out, avoiding the spotlights, the prison yard spotlights that are in the
spotlights
junkyard.
don't work in the sun because it's already bright out.
And no one showed up to attend the junkyard or whatever the hell this
it's a spotlight-based security system.
Understood.
So that's
classic video game spotlights. If you do stand in them, an alarm goes off, but there is no one in attendance.
Yeah, so don't worry about it. So yeah, just an absolute, not even a bad father, a bad human man who is in charge of a kid. To just leave him down there.
At one point, he threatens to just force the kid to sleep outside.
Oh yeah.
At one point, he's like, do what you say, otherwise you don't get shelter tonight. That is an open threat, he says, in the middle of at a point in the movie where he's supposed to be like turning around into a likable character, threatens the removal of shelter from his son.
Yeah. His son also doesn't like hamburgers, and he buys him a hamburger, and he doesn't eat it, so his son just doesn't eat that night. He doesn't get him different food.
Yeah, he does get him a burrito on the
weeks later.
Much later. He's like, I know you like burritos now, so he's at least got that going on. I also want to say this: what is this voice, Hugh Jackman? Hugh, you shouldn't have done that one.
In a couple scenes, it's Southern, right? And then it's not?
It changes throughout the movie.
It does change throughout. And sometimes you can tell that he's like, I'm American, but I don't want to be too Wolverine-y.
And I understand that.
That's the only American I've really ever done because I was Wolverine for so long.
Yeah, I understand that he's not trying to he's trying to avoid the register that Wolverine exists in. He doesn't want to be too gravelly or too deep or anything like that. But he's playing it in this like, he's trying to do Southern a little bit, but it's a dated Southern. He actually comes off less Southern and more of to kind of add to the like old-timey vibe of this story. He comes off like a New Yorker from the 1920s, where like there are times where he's like, I'm going to win the boxing match today. See? Like, it's like, what is this voice that you're doing? You're like an old-timey New York carnival barker to a certain degree.
Yeah, it's kind of like he decided to do the Southern. I feel like the Southern is mostly in the beginning part of the movie.
Yeah.
And then I feel like once he started to bond with his kid and actually had to be excited, he didn't know how to do Southern excited.
He didn't know how to raise his voice in Southern. Yeah. So when he's like yelling at the boxing matches,
we're winning!
It actually just sounds like a generic North American, and it works really well, where it's just him be like, left, right, uppercut, time to punch. And then the scene ends, and he's back to whatever this is. Hey, what are we doing after this one, kiddo? And it's like, well, who's this guy? Yeah.
Different guy when he's punching.
Yeah. And what makes it extra stark is that no one else did a voice.
No one else did a voice.
If anyone backed you up, if Evangeline Lilly was like, we both met in the South and we're both Southern doing this voice. No, his son doesn't do. Hugh Jackman is on a fucking island of crazy accent, dead alone.
And like, there's like big characters in this movie and they're not really doing voices or anything. Like Anthony Mackie is basically like Chris Rock in Fifth Element kind of guy. Like he's got a big microphone and he's introducing stuff.
I mean, he's really just playing himself from 8 Mile again. But yeah.
But he's still just like Anthony Mackie. He didn't do a voice. He didn't do like a big thing. Kevin Durant is in this, but that's just Kevin Durant's speaking voice. Like he's actually got a very unique tone, but that's like what he sounds like the whole time. So yeah, only Hugh Jackman was like, what if I mix it up? And it's like, don't do that.
Didn't quite work, my man.
Don't do that, Hugh.
Didn't quite work. It was
maybe just risk that it's Wolverine.
Yeah, I think you just got to risk that it's Wolverine.
We all like Wolverine.
Try to lighten up the Wolverine a little bit, I think, is kind of what you got to do. Yeah.
Speaking of what he says when like he's boxing, though, I have to say this is another part of the movie that just infuriated me. And it's how often and how long they talk when the robot's fighting.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. The robot is getting pummeled. Like, how fast does a robot get destroyed? Within like 10 seconds. So it'll be like, why aren't you blocking? I'm a little kid. And he'll cover up the microphone because the microphone is how you control the robot. And he'll be like, well, I can't get out of the corner. You see, I got to move my feet. My robot's pretty small, but he's fast. So if I can just get out of the corner. And I'm like, your robot's destroyed.
It's over. The fight's over.
Your robot is gone. You haven't given it a command in 15 seconds while this dialogue happened.
I do not know why they're doing this voice command thing for the robot.
Because you could use the hand control.
The controller thing was such a better visual from earlier in the movie. The voice command thing just does not work in any way. And in fact, it inhibits. It gets in the way of the storytelling.
It absolutely inhibits. Because if he was still using the controller, I wouldn't mind that he keeps talking to his son. Because you can watch a match and do hand controls at the same time.
Yeah.
But you can't give voice commands and talk to your kids.
The voice command choice makes no sense.
It makes no sense. Because, you can still do the shadow boxing later if the remote control breaks.
Yep.
And that's actually like a cool thing at the end. The shadow boxing to win the fight is actually pretty fucking cool.
I'm actually okay with that as well. I think that whole fight sequence at the end actually works pretty good, other than, like yelling over your voice commands and all of that type of stuff. The shadow boxing works. The tension of the fight works. The classic, like, we went every round, but we didn't win kind of Rocky of it all. The winning over the crowd. Like, it is a straight up just like, we're doing Rocky. We're doing Rocky with a robot, and that format works at the end of the movie.
It absolutely, The final
None of it makes sense if you take a second to think about any of it when the villain is like, my computer is showing too many gigabits, and what the fuck is any of it? But if you just take it at face value, if you're a kid watching this movie, that is a fun and exciting fight.
I actually liked what they were getting at, but they didn't explain it as well as I think they should have, which is that, like, the sparring robot is designed to take a lot of hits and last a long time, and Zeus had defeated everyone had ever fought in the first round. So I would understand if he was a robot who wasn't programmed with enough power to do 12 rounds, which seemed to kind of be what they were saying later, but wasn't super clear of, like, why he was running out of power and Adam wasn't, our robot?
Yeah, they were kind of going for I think this might be like the 4th time I've referenced this in a month on the podcast, but the Homer Simpson boxing episode where he just tires out his opponents.
Well, no, that's actually what Muhammad Ali would do, though.
Well, yeah, it's also rope. So. It's rope-a-dope, but actually just
but,
taking the punches.
Yeah, just taking the punches, yeah. So it wasn't made clear of why this was working. Yeah. But I get why it was like, why the robot would be freaking out. But also, the world champion isn't going to give you a fight because, like, a little kid called them out. It's like, no, you're a child.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't have let you have the microphone that long. That was insane. How long you got to talk. But yeah, your ego is not getting hurt by that when you're, like, the richest, most successful person in the world.
No, in no way. In no way at all. And, like, I think that, like, I get the idea in that final fight that the big bad Zeus was using more energy and the battery got low and they kind of wore him out and lasted the whole fight. That concept I get. But when it cuts to the, like, well, there is a Russian lady and a Japanese software designer. And I'm like, okay, what are they doing? And I think at one point they softly imply that the Japanese designer has made full artificial intelligence.
They do say that, yeah.
They imply it. They never say it because one of the reporters goes, are you saying what we think you're saying? And he goes, I'm saying it wins. And he just walks away. It's like, okay. But then there's still like 19 people controlling it. And they cut to like their corner. And it's like, they have so many things. They got way more info on the robot than us. I'm like, but what does that help anything? It works or it doesn't. There's 2 modes.
Yeah, is it auto fighting or is it being controlled?
Yeah. So there's like 4 operators. So there's just a lot of silliness around the
guy
thing.
who designed it doesn't run it.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of silly things, the 2 guys who each control half the robot.
Oh, for the Twin City robot or whatever?
That fight was... What do you each control an arm and a leg?
They're in the drift. They brought nothing in. They brought nothing into the drift. So you got to consider that.
I don't think that's even how it works in Pacific Rim.
No, it works if you bring nothing into the drift.
In Pacific Rim, I think they both are in the machine and they move in sync.
They do sync up.
Yeah,
You're right.
in this one, they each controlled an arm and a leg.
Yeah. Yeah, and the announcers are like, it has 2 heads, which makes it extra smart. It's like, that's not what robot heads do. They're controlling it. It's actually just an extra target for to be punched.
Yeah.
A second head is actually not that beneficial.
No, because, like, you don't even have to put the important stuff in the head. Like... When you design a robot, you kind of like your instinct, because that's where human brains are. But you can put the important stuff like deep in the chest where it's way less likely to get injured.
Yeah, in a much safer place.
You can put it wherever you want to put it.
Yeah, so...
You can put it in the foot.
You can put it in the foot. If you think about it for a second, not a lot of it, but I think all of that stuff I'm okay with because I'm like, it works at face value for a kid's movie. Where I'm like, whatever, there's like 19 operators of the villain robot. Why there would be, who cares? One robot has 2 heads and 2 operators. Why would it be? Who cares? It's just like, you take that at face value. It's like, this is fun. There's some distinct visuals. This would be entertaining for kids. I think that those things do work at the level that they're operating at.
Oh, I wonder if this is entertaining for kids.
I don't think it is, because I think
it
is too long and too mean. I think that there is buried underneath this a movie that really works for kids.
Yeah, I think if Max was the lead and not Hugh Jackman, kids would be like, this movie could be about me. I could be Max. But at no point do you watch this movie and you're like, Max is the lead and he can do whatever he dreams of doing.
That's a really great point that I hadn't even figured out why this doesn't quite work as a kid's movie. And it's because it's a Hugh Jackman film. Yeah, it's not a kid's film that has Hugh Jackman in it.
Yeah, they didn't promote it as a kid's movie. Like, no. I see Hugh Jackman in a movie with robots. I'm like, that's an adult movie with robots and Hugh Jackman. That's going to be like I, Robot with Hugh Jackman. I'm not like, this is a kid's movie. Because I don't even remember the kid in the trailers. And I remember this being a Hugh Jackman and robots.
Yeah, and Hugh Jackman is in every scene. The first act is about him before the kid shows up. It's about Hugh Jackman. But yeah, this is a very different movie if it's about the kid and from the kid's perspective.
Yeah, if the kid
That's
is
a
just
full-on
like
fun kids movie.
My absent dad showed up and he fights robots for a living. That's actually pretty cool.
That's not
like
bad.
He's an asshole, but I am interested in this.
That's not bad at all.
It's an interesting movie.
Yeah.
I think I accidentally found my change, but I have others.
I think you did.
This has happened before.
Also, this movie scored by Danny Elfman, which was unexpected.
But like, at what point?
The only
they just
point
keep playing real songs.
Yeah, there's like 3 Eminem songs, and I'm like, Danny Elfman? What do we?
Like the first music I recognized was an Eminem song, and I'm like, weird coalition between these two.
Literally, the only point where I noticed like original score was the final fight sequence, which was actually done pretty well. So I'm like, did they get Danny Elfman for like one piece and then used just like jukebox record drops for the rest of it?
Because this whole opening credits sequence as a movie I hadn't checked IMDb about was insane. Because it was like Hugh Jackman was the only one I knew who was in it. I'm like, Evangeline Lilly. I'm like, okay, she's gettable. But then Anthony Mackie, I was like, oh, Anthony Mackie's in this. And then it's like, Sugar Ray Leonard did the choreography. I'm like, what are you talking about?
What is that? How did you get...
What?
Very quickly, I was like, I see why this was $100 million movie. You got a bunch of people that you did not need to get. And like, good for you, I guess?
Yeah, executive produced by
Or maybe bad
Spielberg.
for you because it didn't make the money that you needed it to make.
But like, you really put the time and money in.
Yeah.
And the people.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't flop for any of those reasons.
No.
An incredible sequence of going through a cast list.
Very shocking. Very surprising. Let's talk about just for a second the Evangeline Lilly's character. This weird romance and visibly deleted scenes.
Wow. I actually kind of love when you can tell something's been deleted. Like, not love, I'm like, what a good movie. I'm like, oh, fuck, you had to delete so much shit around this character, huh? Just the scene where she's in the bar with the guy and they have to keep cutting the scene off before he can open his mouth because this man clearly had every other scene he had deleted is so funny.
It's so funny that like it's her watching the fight from one of the fights from a bar, and she sits down and clinks glasses with a guy and like turns her back to him, and clearly he's frustrated, and every scene ends with him going like, and then the scene cuts away, and then every scene starts with him visibly having just finished a sentence and her being frustrated with him. I'm like, oh, this guy's gone, huh?
This guy,
whatever this subplot was.
Yeah, this subplot was definitely she was dating someone, and that's why she wasn't currently with Hugh Jackman. But all of his scenes got cut, so they just rewrote it that she's only not with Hugh Jackman because she's just not with Hugh Jackman right now.
And frankly, awesome that this guy's scenes got cut. This movie was too long and did not need a subplot for the like fourth build character that like frankly the movie kind of has too many little subplots going on anyway. So that I think it was a great call. It's just funny how obvious it was that it had been deleted.
Yeah, they didn't take any footage of Evangeline Lilly in that bar without this guy, or they would have just absolutely used that.
And what's also fascinating is they could have just not shown Evangeline Lilly in a bar watching it.
They had footage of her watching it on TV for like other ones. Like she could have watched anywhere.
Yeah. There's other solutions to the problem. So that's an interesting choice. Also, this romance just doesn't really work in any way.
Okay, this is the weird. Thank God that you said that, because sometimes I just don't read these things, and I had to turn to you. I'm like, this is bad, right? This isn't me not reading romance as I sometimes cannot do. Because they're not dating. They've maybe dated when they were kids. It seems like I've gotten the impression they at least smooched before.
Yeah. They definitely dated when they were young.
Yeah, they dated when they were younger, but they are not dating right now in any way, shape, or form. She's clearly dating this other guy. They're not involved. And then Hugh Jackman like takes his kid and leaves him with the aunt because his life is too dangerous, which is the only responsible thing he does in this movie. And then he goes to her place. She's asleep in her bed, and he crawls into bed with her while she's asleep and starts cuddling her. This is not the relationship they have.
She does say, I think they try to imply it. She does say like he owes her rent, but for a while I thought that meant that he was like renting a separate room upstairs, not that they had been living together and he had left and not been paying rent.
Even if he lived there, he doesn't sleep in her bed.
Yeah. Well, this is what I mean. I thought what they were initially saying was that he lived there in a different room.
Oh, I also thought that.
And in retrospect, I think what they were saying is that they lived together as a couple, and he owed her his half of rent for the place that they lived in together.
Oh, I don't think that's what was happening. Because my other thought of rent was he was also keeping all of his robots there. If he like owed her like rental space.
Well, they were never clear. They were never clear.
No, they were never clear.
And also, she never does anything, which is so frustrating.
Not a thing.
She's the mechanic, the air quote, like the mechanic. And he shows up with like a robot, and he's like, "Can you fix it?" And she's like, "No." Then he buys a new robot, and he's like, "Can we beef it up?" And then the kid has to be like, you got to set it to English because she didn't know. And then that robot breaks and he's like, can we make anything out of these two broken robots and all the parts that I took from the dump? And she's like, no.
Absolutely not.
And then the kid's like, I have a robot. And she's like, no. And the kid's like, I think I can fix it. Like, she is just wildly incompetent with no agency or ability for this entire movie.
I think she puts a battery in the kid's robot.
Okay.
It's the only thing she does. Yeah. And she's like, I programmed your console. She's like, I had an old remote and I just hooked it up. And it was like, okay, it is frustrating to me that she and Hugh Jackman don't seem to know a lot about robots.
Anything.
And their whole profession seems to be robots now. Yeah. So she has no agency. She doesn't change the plot at all. Every time they all think they only smooch once. And it's like, well, I didn't need this. This is a movie about Hugh Jackman and his kid.
Yes.
When they shoehorn in a romance that doesn't need to be there, it is just like, because Evangeline Lilly, for those who haven't seen it, is not the kid's mom, is not related to the kid in any way, has never met the kid. This is not anything involving the child. Yeah. It's unnecessary. Yeah, she doesn't affect the plot. She doesn't help him figure out how to fight the robot or do anything with the robot. She's just kind of like, hey, man.
Hey,
how do you like my hair?
I'm around. I own one of the sets of this movie.
I own a set.
I own a set. It's kind of a gym. What does that mean in this world? None of us fucking know. Yeah. We never see them. There's no training montage. They're using the gym. There's no getting stronger montage in the gym.
You could, because they do train the robot, but they do it
never in the
field.
gym. They never do it in the gym.
Go to a random field.
It does not make sense why this character's here at all.
No, so her boyfriend got cut, and she probably could have been cut for the most part as well.
I would say so. And then just the dead mom. The dead mom just never there are times where like the kid does something and I'm like, your mom died yesterday.
Like this week.
Yeah, and I don't feel like we're really drawing attention to that.
Yeah, at the very end, they have a weird thing where they're like, Hugh Jackman comes to get the kid again and make amends, and the kid's like, my mom was cool, right? And he's like, she was the coolest. And they don't even like tear up or cry. They're just like, right, your mom.
Right, I forgot she exists.
It would have been much better if they hadn't mentioned her at all.
Yeah.
If you're not going to make a thing of this woman, then don't even bring it up.
Because when he's like, your mom was the coolest, I'm like, your reaction was, oh, she's dead? When you found out she's dead. I don't think she was the coolest.
Yeah, this kid never once even had a breakdown about his mom dying. Like, he clearly, like, wasn't that affected by it.
The sister don't give a shit.
She went off to Italy.
No one cares that this woman be dead.
No one cares. And then there's clearly other deleted scenes, I think, because the very end line of this movie makes no sense, which is they've won the fight, and Hugh Jackman, like, looks at his son. He's like, son, Max, I just want to tell you. And the son's like, I get it. Your secret's safe with me. And we're like, what was the secret?
I don't know if the implication of that scene was that he was going to say I love you, but isn't good with saying things. So the kid's like, don't even worry about it.
That hasn't been established at any point in the movie.
Yeah, something's wrong.
Something's wrong. Because I wasn't sure if he was going to say I'm sorry or I love you or I'm proud of you. Yeah. And then the kid's like, I get it. And I'm like, I'll
keep your secret.
I don't get it.
I don't get this at all. Yeah, that was very confusing. I couldn't pinpoint what they were. I thought it was maybe subverting an I love you, but it wasn't clear enough to really make anything out of it.
Mm-hmm. Here's another thing that I'm not sure about. And I think you'll agree with me that we're not sure about it. Was the robot sentient?
Was the robot
sentient?
Oh, yeah. They didn't make that clear at all either.
What's going on with the robot?
At one point, they make it clear that they're like, the robot has to be controlled, or it has mirror mode, or voice commands. Those are the three ways the robot moves. Physical controls, mirror mode, voice command.
And mirror mode just means it does what you physically do.
Yeah.
For those who haven't seen it.
But then the kid is kind of bonding with it in this kind of like this Pixar-y, Baymax type of a way.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, but the kid is anthropomorphizing the robot and implying a relationship there. And for the most part, it actually kind of sells and I buy it. There are some shots of like him and the robot where I'm like, this is actually kind of sweet. Like the framing and just like the sitting on the truck and having a Dr. Pepper.
Yeah,
and like,
the dancing was also very cute. But there's parts where he's like running with it and the robot isn't exactly mirroring him.
Yeah.
So it's like, wait, what happened at that point?
And then when they leave the robot at one point, like at the arena, we hang with the robot who very almost imperceptibly turns its head a little to look at itself in a mirror.
And it's a long shot. It's a long, meaningful, like over a minute long shot of the robot looking at itself in the mirror. And I'm like, and as an audience member who has pretty good reading of movies, I'm like, oh, this means the robot is secretly alive and rooting for these two? Because at like the peak of the bond between the father and son. Mm-hmm. They're winning, they're happy. And so the robot's left alone. He looks in the mirror, and there is, I agree, an almost perceptible head turn and a little bit of a smile, maybe.
Maybe a time, yeah.
And then nothing ever comes up again about this robot maybe being sentient.
No.
He doesn't like do moves that Hugh Jackman didn't tell him to do.
Yeah.
He doesn't get up even though his power cells are dead and they shouldn't work. Like.
No, they don't know what to say about that.
They have no thoughts about whether this robot is alive or not.
Yeah. And same thing with like the main villain robot, Zeus, being like, it's AI we've implied. And it's like, does that mean it feels and thinks? And they're like, don't worry about it. We don't have anything to say about that. It's like, well, then why bring it up? In fact, I have this idea. Why bring it up in that scenario?
This movie could be so much shorter.
Yeah.
It could just be a really strong robot.
This is a great short story.
I'm I'm sure it is a great short story.
Well, let's go in for the close. Let's ask the final question of what would you change. So now that we've discussed everything we've discussed, what would you change about this if you could change anything? Before we do ask the final question, we will remind you, as we do every week, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podcast Addict, or wherever you might get your podcasts. It helps us move up the charts and it helps us find new fans.
Yes, it really helps us out. It warms us in our hearts and on the charts. And if you want to support us monetarily, you can check out our Patreon. We mentioned we're doing Twisters next week. We did Twister on the Patreon this month.
Singular and the first one.
And a great movie.
Yeah, and we talk about that over on our Patreon exclusive episodes. So when you check out our Patreon page, you can contribute to help keep this network running, to keep the podcast active. That's basically how we keep this our full-time job. And whatever it is that you can afford to contribute, whether that's $1 a month, $5, $10, whatever you have going on, you'll get cool exclusive bonuses. At the $10 hero level, you get the bonus episode every single month, including Twister, which is what we did this month. You also get immediate access to the full back catalog when you sign up at that $10 level. And whatever level you sign up at, there's no obligations. You can always cancel or lower or even increase your level on any given month if your finances happen to change. And there's lots of cool options. If you want to sign up for a year, you'll get 1 month free. So there's ways of doing that. Cool ways to support the podcast and getting lots of bonuses for it. Check out everything that we have to offer over at patreon.com/fromsuperheroes. That is patreon.com/fromsuperheroes. And now let's go in for the close. Let's ask the final question. Now that we've discussed everything we've discussed, what would you change about this if you could change anything? Diana, what would you change?
My changes are so many and small. It's like it's a movie that just doesn't work in the details. Like the idea of guy bonds with his son over robot boxing. I'm actually like, yeah, there's a movie there. But like all of my changes are like, I have so many tiny changes. Like we're going to introduce the backstory so much sooner that Hugh Jackman used to be a boxer. This is so late. And also like the entire world needs its backstory sooner of like, robot boxing's a thing. It's like a little bit in the future. It's this. It's all introduced way too late. I'm going to change it that Hugh Jackman only loses one robot because, man, what a loser. He's not good at robot boxing.
He's terrible.
We didn't talk about this point, but it is so frustrating how bad he is at robot boxing. He's not just a guy down on his luck with shitty robots who's losing because he has the skill and not the equipment. He's bad at it. So I'm really annoyed that he lost two $50,000 robots in the first 10 minutes of this movie, because if I had $100,000, life-changing. He's just throwing it away.
Yeah.
I hate this man. Hate this man so much. He only loses one robot in the beginning. And actually, Hugh also just knows things about robots. He's not just an idiot who doesn't know how they work and can only use a remote control to control them. He has to, like, be part of this world. I know he used to be a boxer, but he has to, like, be, if he's been in this world for over a decade, he has to be in it. He has to know things about it. And that really, really frustrates me. And then there's probably, like, 5 to 10 more little changes along the way that I would also add. No Evangeline Lilly. I don't know why Zeus has 2 handlers who are unrelated to each other and neither one do anything. There's so many little things wrong with this movie. The robot's not sentient. I don't know. There's so many little things to change. Just don't make it. Maybe just read the short story. I really didn't like this movie. Andrew, what would you change?
I love where your head's at.
I went on a huge, sorry about that.
Hey, there's a lot going on. I support all of it. Yes, I agree with you for all of the changes to Hugh Jackman's character. So I think that could be fixed up. For me, I'm on board with yours. My main change is to streamline and update the story a little bit. Remove the sister. Mm-hmm. Remove her fiance.
Okay.
The mother is still alive. And the mother is just Evangeline Lilly.
Okay.
Evangeline Lilly's character of Bailey, I believe. Bailey is the biological mother of the child and has contacted Charlie to be like, I want you to sign over paternal rights. You haven't been around for whatever MacGuffin reason. Maybe she's dating someone new and she wants to get married. Maybe she wants to leave the gym to her son's name. Maybe there's some legal or tax reason. She's like, I want you to sign over paternal rights. Please come back. And then that's the reason that they get back in each other's lives. It gets rid of the dead mother that the child is not traumatized by and does not bring up in any way. It gets rid of like the Dickensian orphanage of it all. It gets rid of the rich uncles who buy and sell children. It gets rid of the turn of the century orphanage of the whole story just by it being a biological mother who's like, hey, you're not a great dad, sign over the rights. And then actually he could maybe want to spend the summer with his son. And then that makes it a different story. So I think that would be a fun way. And then it would also make sense that it's like it is the child of a mechanic and a boxer who understands both worlds.
Yeah, if he grew up in that gym, it would make sense why he could fix all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So then like it makes the story faster, it makes the story cleaner, it makes the story more modern and updated, and it makes Hugh Jackman less of a shitty guy who doesn't care that his ex is dead or that this child is now grieving and they're not buying and selling children. It is just a dad who's a little bit scummy and in over his head learning to be responsible. And it is not a full-on scam artist huckster buying and selling children for profit.
I really like this change. Yeah, I think there's like a few more tiny little changes within it. Like maybe he just like goes to see Evangeline Lilly for the first time in 10 years to buy a robot and finds out he has a kid. Like something like that.
Yeah.
But like I agree that like that is faster. It's more kid-friendly. Like if this is a PG-rated kids movie at the end of the day, we don't need a dead mom, especially if you're not going to make a big emotional crux of it. So no, I really like that. More lighthearted, faster. It gets you in there. It explains more plot points. He's not such a piece of shit as he is and like totally irredeemable as he seems in this movie. Yeah, I can get behind all this. I love it.
And if I combine it with one of the ones you had mid-episode, if this movie was from the kid's perspective, if it started with a kid who is interested in mechanics and interested in robots and loves the robot fighting league, and then this guy comes into his gym who he then finds out is his dad. The dad didn't know he was there. The kid didn't know who his dad was. Finds out his dad was this cool boxer and wants to be around and learn about that. It makes it way more interesting than if it's from the kid's perspective as well. Yeah. To be like, oh, I want to get to know my dad. I want to get to know boxing. And the mom being like, I didn't tell you about him because he's a deadbeat. Like, I don't want you to know about the boxing world. Yeah, and it also works if it's really from the kid's perspective then.
Yeah, that all works. It's great changes.
Yeah.
We real stealed it.
We real stealed it. Well, that is going to do it for us for this week on the podcast. Next week, we will be back and we will be talking about Twisters with an S. Before the following week, then we will be talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, getting back onto more Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, and Sean Levy. So we will talk to you all next week. In the meantime, if you want to get a hold of us, you can find me online. I am at Ivimey, Ivimey.
You can find me on Tumblr at Words of Diana or Threads and Instagram at Pics of Diana. And you can find Sex Lives of Superheroes available for pre-order wherever you get your books.
Pre-order that right now. And you can find both of us and everything we create at From Superheroes and on our website, fromsuperheroes.com. And we'll talk to y'all next week.
Bye.